Press go. And press go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sonic Talk. Clock. Oh, I think my audio just cut out. Not sure why that is, but it's back now. Welcome to number 287. I'm Nick Batt, editor of sonicstate.com. Welcome to those in the chat room, sonicstate.com/live, where you see the live video stream and you can participate in some IRC type action via Flash client. And of course, this now usually ends up on YouTube unless there's some catastrophic technical happening, which is starting to feel like that might be happening because my voice keeps cutting out. But we'll soldier on and see how we get on. I want to say thank you very much to everybody joining us. Now, all the guys are doing, they're starting to mess me around now. They're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So let's say hello. We'll say hello to, let's start with Mark Tinley, who's over there in the east of the country.
I'm getting very worried about Dave. I think you should have started with him. He's going to fall off in a minute.
You can't see that. I'm doing the switching so that we've got a split screen with me and Mark now, in case you are listening to an audio only. Mark Tinley, lightbeing.com.
Hello.
Sound designer, artist, creative thinker. How are you, Mark?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Your webcam, it really is very good quality. What is it?
It's my missus's laptop.
Ah, okay.
When I bought her for her birthday.
Well, that's we've discussed that before, isn't it? It's like the equivalent of
Bell Easy Note.
Ah, right. He's got a very good webcam. Actually, really good. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Mark. A pleasure to have you aboard, as ever. And now we'll flip over to Gaz Williams, who's over there in Bristol in his garret, as I've said before. Gaz Williams, right there.
Hello.
Who's gone? He's taken your Ethan Weiner approach and applied it to a preset, because Gaz likes to go through his TC Voice Live, which is why his voice usually sounds so good. But now it sounds like this.
All your equipment is rubbish. Buy real traps.
Wow.
That was pretty impressive, actually, there. Anyway, Gaz, thank you for joining us. Gaz, of course, at Gaz Goldstar on Twitter. We're still waiting for his web property to be rekindled because it died on the Mac, Mobile Me, whatever it is, when they cut it all off. Gaz, of course, bass player, technology specialist, songwriter, producer, engineer, mastering engineer. All those things are true, I believe.
Been doing a lot of mastering lately. It's kind of, that's in a mastering kind of space. I wonder that you could have some sort of pun type mastering house, couldn't you? The master something or other. I only bring this up because the other day I saw a plumber's van, which is obviously a lady plumber, and her plumbing moniker was Plum Her, which doesn't sound right to me. I mean, it sounds like the wrong sort of thing to put on as a lady plumber. But anyway, you could have something similar. It was in the Bristol area. When I do have mastering credits, it's always mastered at Fliskin Manor, and Fliskin Manor comes back from when I was in secondary school. I was trying to come up with a swear word. I wanted to invent a swear word, and I wanted to get it popular. And the word was Fliskin, and I think it was quite cool. One time, the Minister of Wales. He was going, but what I really want to know is, where is this Fliskin Manor? So I thought that was I think as my teenage self, I really kind of achieved something there.
Excellent. Well done. No, I'm glad you've got it in there. And it's always good to have these things kind of references going on there. Nice work. Right, we're going to go to let's see, let's have Dave Spears and Andy Shillito together, because we also have a special guest today in the form of Andy Shillito, who is front house engineer. Someone's going to have to talk there so that your icon goes all big, so I can. Hello there. A bit longer than that. There we go. We got him. There we go. Andy Shillito and Dave Spears. If I go Dave Spears, g4software.com, Andy Shillito. I'm afraid I just put front house engineer because, as I said in the pre-chat, I couldn't find any kind of online reference to you anywhere apart from a Facebook page that hadn't been updated for 4 years. And I think there was something CBB Touring where you're listed as an engineer, and there's a really dodgy picture of you out of focus somewhere in a venue.
Yep. That's just goes to show how lucky you are to have me here today.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the point is a man who doesn't have to have any kind of web presence or credits online is clearly so busy and is so swimming in the flow that there's no need for any of that.
I haven't had time to get round to the internet yet. I've been so busy for the last
15 years.
Yeah.
Andy Shillito, you've just come off tour with The Darkness, right?
Indeed, yes.
That's because you've worked with them for quite some time, right?
I have worked with them for almost 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, since about 2003.
And not only that, but they've been supporting Lady Gaga. So it's a true kind of superstar, full pop experience, pop and metal kind of joined together in a beautiful, strange symbiosis.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it is, I suppose. The hair show's quite glammy. There's a bit of a glam vibe going on, generally speaking, around Lady Gaga. And I believe it was partly her choice. They had some DJs, and I think she made the suggestion that they use The Darkness.
I suppose
it's quite nice. I mean, it's quite nice that it's good that it happened that way, because going on to that size of a tour and not being requested by the artists themselves would probably make life a little bit more difficult when the crew have been used to a DJ.
And you've got like double bass drums, a gong, 18 cymbals, and
costume changes, wardrobe.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Well, I'm sure she could do.
But it's been good. They've all been really lovely, and the shows have been good.
Oh, well, I want to talk to you a bit more about that later on. But obviously, I realised that obviously working with Gaga, you've probably had to sign some kind of ghastly legal agreement that means that you can't mention anything to do with her. But I will stand off from that. I respect that, and I'll try not to slip in any indiscreet questions.
Thank you very much. I'll try not to avoid them too heavily when you do.
And also we got Rich Hilton is back. We haven't had Rich for a couple of weeks. It's great to see you there, Rich. Rich, of course, is in well, where are you exactly? I suppose you're in sunny Connecticut, although it's probably not so sunny these days.
Beautiful out.
It's
beautiful.
Glad to hear that.
Yes, I'm at home. It's gorgeous here. It's the prime week of autumn with the gorgeous golden leaves and the
it is, yeah. The New England beech and maple business, I expect, isn't it? Rich Hilton, you're looking very well groomed. You look like you've done your hair and had a really close shave. I feel honoured. Not that you don't normally look your best, of course, but there's just something about you this week that's even more special.
Well, thank you. Paired knee.
Yes, you've just recently come back from knee work. Yes.
It's all good, though.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I am glad to hear that. So have you got the kind of happy sheen of a man who's been on heavy painkillers for a couple of days?
No. I didn't. I took like 3 of them in the beginning, and that was it. The second
fantastic.
day I was out and about on crutches, and the third day I was out and about without crutches.
Oh, that's fantastic. Rich Hilton, of course, mans the controls for Nile Rodgers' private studio, and also goes out on the road with Chic as a bona fide member of the travelling disco band, legendary disco band. So thanks for joining us, Rich. Are you kind of on time off at the moment then, or are you back at work?
Well, Nile has very kindly cut me a lot of time to get my knee back together. I did actually go there to sort of surprise him last week. And we're in communication all the time, and we've actually got a gig coming up at the end of the month, so we've been talking about that.
Excellent. Oh, I'm glad to hear
you're going to say change the locks.
Yeah. He'd never do something like that.
Did you make it to Corrie's thing?
Well, it wouldn't be the first time. Excuse me?
Did you make it to Corrie's thing? Did you drive there in the end?
I'm trying to remember which thing because I go to so many of them. But I've seen they've played a bunch of gigs lately.
Honey was on a stall or something, and we were talking on Skype on. Must have been on Saturday, I think. Was it Saturday?
Okay, Saturday would be a marching band competition.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm glad you. I imagine the marching part must have been a bit tricky, but
we're talking about the week of the surgery. That was on a Thursday, and the Saturday there was an honorarium for it was at our high school, and the whole thing had a thing for the graduating seniors, and my son is a graduating senior. That's what you're talking about. Yes, I made it. I made it out onto the field without crutches.
Cool. Excellent.
I was happy about that.
Right, I want to apologise that we seem to be having a few audio dropouts to the live audience and also here as well. But I'm going to try and pause over them where I can, so that they'll just be kind of interesting interludes. Anyway, we now have everybody. I want to go back to Andy Shillito, because I want to quiz you a little bit about your about the kind of the touring machinery of what you be doing. Have you got big lorries and all that sort of business, or are you kind of using their front of house stuff?
There are big lorries, lots of them. She has, I believe there are 39. We have half a one, which they very kindly lend us, that we share with the drivers' bikes. The rest of the truck has the teams of drivers' push bikes in it, and our backline.
39 trucks. That is.
She's got. I think it's 39.
How do they get the parking? That must be a nightmare. Do they all have to sort of drive in one by one and then go and park outside of town somewhere?
I don't know. They do it overnight, don't they? Oh. So, thankfully, I don't have to see that. But I would imagine it's the size of the gigs just means there's enormous car parks everywhere.
Yeah, I guess so. That's the.
So it tends to be that.
And what are you using front of house? Are you doing the DigiDesign thing, or has you got?
No, we're on a Digicore D7s.
Ah, okay, that's interesting.
Which were their choice. They changed engineer just as we joined the tour, for one thing. They changed the front of house guy. And he brought in a Digicore. It's D&B speaker systems, which he spec'd. And we just use his desk because it's all totally recallable. So we literally just load shows. He loads his show after mine.
Right. So how does that work? Do you have a kind of did you know that was coming and you do a kind of production rehearsal with that desk so that when you go there you've got your kind of cut stuff and your cues ready, or did you have to make it up sort of on the first sound check, as it were?
No, I went into a warehouse for an afternoon and put laid stuff out on the desk and did EQs and chose comps and stuff like that, and made a desk file up and then emailed it across the world, and when I arrived it was already there. So a good starting point with plugins and all that kind of thing. So yeah, no, it's all pre-prepped really.
Oh, that's interesting. So does the Digico system run plugins, or have you got external stuff that sort of interfaces to your kind of
No, it's all internal. And it tends to be better to use the stuff that's on board, which is often not as posh or intricate or as kind of vintage as some of the stuff that you can add in. But it does tend to work a lot more efficiently if you use the onboard stuff.
Oh, what, in terms of sort of latency and stuff like that, or is it just in question?
Yeah, just in terms of latency and quality of signal, really. I mean, those things that it's not that I don't know a great deal about this, but it's a lovely. What we have found is it's a lovely desk.
Right. So it's
and I would be reluctant to move on to anything else now.
Oh, interesting. Because I'm guessing probably most of the stuff that you have been working on is what, is it DigiDesign based? Because I mean that seems to be everywhere. Or are you?
Yeah, the DigiDesign stuff is what's turning up more commonly.
Yeah.
And I presume it's slightly cost based, and that you can cross-platform across the desks, which is kind of nice because you go into smaller venues and they've only got the 16-channel version maybe, and you can quite quickly get a file across onto a smaller desk, which you can't do so easily on the other makes of digital desk that are popular.
Ah, okay. I think Rich put something in the chat room. I don't know if that was a question for Andy. Do you get good consistency from the band on a nightly basis? I mean, is the sort of setup able to, they can just kind of bang it at me? Because they're obviously professional guys. I saw some video. In fact, I got a little bit of video of them performing at the Isle of Wight, which I'm guessing was something that you might have done as well this year.
Yes, that is something that we did this year. Yeah, they're very consistent, the boys, and the I think if I ever talk about this, I always say this, but the techs are very consistent and very good. So yeah, you kind of I'm confident in what I'm going to get from the band,
right?
Practically all the time. So yeah, it's knowing what you're going to get. I suppose one of the things is we don't really get much looking for sound checks and stuff on this, so that was kind of hitting the ground running a bit. But what it is useful to know is the difference between how a drum kit or a kick drum is going to sound when the drum tech hits it, as to when the performer actually gets up in front of X number of people and hits it.
Ah, right. Okay. Do you get like virtual soundcheck stuff, or is that not part of what happens?
No, well, we don't get any time to do that at all.
Ah, right. So you just kind of...
They do. He does. The Gaga show gets soundchecked every day.
Yeah. I suppose that's as you expect. It's an interest. I mean, it must be quite. I mean, you've been on this sort of scale of tour before, though, right? I mean, it's not an unusual environment for you.
No, not particularly. No.
What's the kind of big? I hope that doesn't happen thing for something that's so well oiled and so kind of fantastically.
But I don't turn up.
Yeah, well, apart from like individuals not showing up and having to cancel shows, I mean, what's the sort of? I mean, those sort of problems that happen on a regular basis.
On a regular basis, the power going off on a regular basis is probably the most unavoidable, shockingly
terminal.
Arresting thing that can happen. I was wondering when you were asking me the question whether you were actually, that was a really close question, and what you were really asking me was what's the biggest mistake I've made so far on this tour.
Well, I could ask that if you like. If you want me to,
I guess would provide a more interesting answer.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, what's the biggest mistake you've made on tour so far?
Well, Nick, it was like this. I accidentally, something that confuses me greatly about live desk, particularly because it's not such a problem in the studio, is they always seem to put either in the case of Yamaha, the on-off button. In the case of every other desk, the mute button is always next to the solo button, which, I find a little risky, personally. Yeah, having put, without getting too sort of techie, unless that's the point, having put everything into VCAs and then thrown it over into groups so that the drum kit went out of a stereo channel, the basses went out of a separate stereo channel, and so on.
Yeah.
Each person's guitars, backing vocals, which were then compressed by everything, or were then compressed or affected, had other things put onto those groups on the way out, such as graphics and stuff. And I then duped it again to put a left and right one on so that I could compress left and right and have a quick grab graphic on it, and was gleefully listening to that soloed in the headphones without realising that I'd actually caught the mute button at the same time. So I could hear it perfectly well in my headphones, but unfortunately the 40,000 people at Twickenham couldn't hear it for about 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, that's got to be a blushing moment.
Yeah, you don't do it again.
No.
I mean, it's, kind of necessary, but...
I find that stuff like that, I tend to kind of like just tape things over and you can get special little, they're like little bits of Tupperware and plastic that you just put over buttons that you really don't want to hit. We have it on our cameras for the trade shows. There's a button that you can hit that what it does is it will basically switch the camera from video mode into some other mode, and you really don't want that to happen. So we just gaffer tape them up. I mean, I guess you can't do that across 196 channels, but there must be some specific ones you can nobble.
There is a very specific one on the Midas, which is something that you really don't want to be using.
Sorry, could you just repeat that? We had another pause. I'm sorry about this. It just I don't know what it is because I'm not seeing any clock issues or anything anywhere. So
okay, no, there is actually a button on the old Midas analog desks, which is a solo in place button, which you really don't want to hit, and they build a plastic cap for that you can put over it. But it's always nice to see a digital desk with half a fag packet gaffer taped over a dangerous button. That's always a nice mix of technologies.
That's right. It's like the kind of DEFCON 5. It's the button that you need the key to open the flap, then you need another key, and you both have to press it at the same time for it to have an effect.
My argument is don't put those on live desks, please.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very, very good point.
Don't need them. They only serve to cause disaster.
Yeah, I would agree. That's very wise words indeed there, Andy. Thank you very much. I think we can probably go to one of our topics now because that's also the way things work. I might be a bit flip about a bit, because I mean this one might be actually something that's interesting that we could kind of tie in with the live effects. And also, Rich, I know you probably have something to say about this. And this was if I go here, I don't know if you can see this. This is the page on Reddit, which is actually We Are the Music Makers, which is a really good, quite vibrant set of links and comments and questions that come up, and I use it quite a lot for certainly ideas for topics for the show. But it's a really good community. If you're interested, you go to Reddit and look for We Are the Music Makers. And this was posted by somebody called Vodo Sloshk Bass, or Bass, I'm sorry. It says, we have a live board mix from a venue a few years ago and would like to add some vocal backing and instrumentation that wasn't possible at the time. While maintaining the integrity of the live sounds, are there any suggestions for adding new tracks? And this is kind of an interesting thing, because I know, Rich, for instance, you've had the issue where you've been working on live DVDs and what have you, and you've been putting them together to master them. I mean, presumably there have been instances where you think, actually, we could support this a little bit, or bounce things out. I don't know how you do that, but there must have been instances in your illustrious career where you've had to try and do that. How would you match? How would you start an approach like that? It's really situational, but I feel like the time when my friend asked the ice sculptor, how does he do the Statue of Liberty out of a block of ice? And he said, it's easy. You just cut away everything that's not the Statue of Liberty. Right. So I want to tell you, it's easy. You just don't do anything that doesn't sound like part of the original performance. But sort of, if you guide it by that, then it becomes very situational. A good example, for example, would be that this past summer I had to provide backing tracks for some singers for the Montreux Jazz Festival. And one of them was to be based on a live version of a song she had done with a band. And the section that had been recorded didn't contain all of the chords that had been performed in that live version with the band. So what I needed to do was match essentially a synth sound and lay it into a 2-track mix of what that I assembled out of what I could find and make out of instrumental tracks, because she wants to be a track actor, but she has no tracks. And so I had to match an existing keyboard sound that was in their record in order to flesh out this bridge that they had done live sometime later that would match what she was expecting to hear. So that's a recent example of when I had to do that. Okay. Most of the time with live stuff, you can grab it from some other part of the recording. You rarely actually have to play things in unless it's harmonic material that doesn't exist anywhere else. Okay, but I mean, in the instance where, say, you might be using a live show as the basis for some bonus tracks or whatever, and you think, I'll just replace X or Y, is there a kind of an approach that you would start with? How would you begin in a situation? Play and I hit record and I play the piano part. Okay. I've done that, yeah. Yeah, I had to do that too, or whatever. But you do, like I said, you do whatever you have to do to sound like you were there with doing it with them when they were doing it. You just use. So I mean, it could be so many different things, I suppose. There's not some like you were there plugin you stick in on the fader that makes it like necessarily sound like you were there. You do whatever you have to do to the sound you're working with to make it sound appropriate to what you're trying to interject it to, so it doesn't call any attention to itself unless it's supposed to call attention to itself. Got you. I mean, one thing that sort of came up in the replies, or we've had so far one reply to that particular comment, was the idea of sort of using match EQs and things like that. I mean, is that something that would make sense, or would you tend to... I'm not necessarily. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. What about Andy? I'm going to hit you next, because presumably you have to actually deal with being in charge of the live recordings, and I know that you have a studio background as well, so there's probably something in there that you must have come across this situation before yourself, right?
Well, yeah, Rich, I was thinking about this morning when Dave first invited me to come on to do it, and most of the things that Richard just said are the key things, really, are... You've got to make it feel like you were there. So looking for EQ matches and gadgets with which to simulate the fact that you were there, or that something sounds like it was there, is not really the way to go. The way to go is to try and get most of the sound of everything. I always like to cite Bernard Edwards' bass sound. I understand, I don't know this for a fact, but I understand that you could give that man any bass you liked and it would come out sounding like that pretty much, because that's what was coming off his fingers. And that's where it is ready, you have to, you know, I think the initial response, press play, press record, and just get in there, because that's what you would have been doing if you would have been playing with a band.
But what about in terms of ambience and the surrounding kind of?
Are we all still audible?
Yes. Sorry,
sorry. In terms of that, I was thinking about that, and I think probably the to do that is to try and copy the ambience that's on your live recording. I would probably, and having done this, having had to do it a couple of times, it depends on what part it is. My experience, obviously, is more in guitar parts, involved in overdubbing slight bits once or twice of guitar parts. As Richard said, the easiest way and the most authentic way is to go and get it from elsewhere in the song, pull it in and make it fit.
Right.
If you can't do that, you have to re-record it. When I was doing that, in order to get them to sound similar, I tended to EQ both of them toward a common point, as opposed to trying to EQ the new one to sound like it was a gig. So if that meant putting the original guitar through a plugin of some sort, or putting a reverb on it, then I would affect the original one in some way that I was capable of affecting the new one.
So you get a kind of a common ground, a glue, that kind of thing. That's an interesting idea.
There's a way to glue it together, and then obviously if that's proving difficult, I would then err away from using the direct signal as much as possible, and create something that you could easily, the two things could easily appear to be each other once set in the mix.
Oh, we have a bit of gossip in the chat room here, which I'm going to bring in just quickly. A friend of mine went on tour with Brian Ferry and had to use his soft synths to program his old synth sounds. Apparently, Brian wasn't happy with the sounds, told him to go back and redo them. He went back 2 weeks later with no tweaks, and he loved them. That's a very mean story, but one that makes me chuckle, and I'm sure that you can. Mark Tinley, I know you want to get it because you're really into convolution and match EQ and that sort of stuff, right?
Massively overexcited by all of this, and I'm going to completely contradict everyone. I'm a very logical person, so I don't care how it feels really half the time. I think that feeling's a story that you've made up about stuff, and it's possibly not real. So I would logically approach it with a match EQ, and I would go and find, would then record new vocals and try and match EQ to make it sound exactly like the other vocal. Same with guitars or any other parts. I might do a match EQ of the entire track, or I might do subgroups of match EQ for things, and then I would try and make things sound exactly the same as the things that are already there. And
would you get a bit like
I find that approach works.
Right.
I mean, I put things into tracks that I recorded in like 1984 or whatever, and I thought I'm never going to get this to fit or sound like it should even be in here. And using the match EQ approach, it works really well. The only thing that you can't, I think that the thing that really screws it up is when somebody comes along and puts a beautifully polished reverb on and tries to match the space. I actually think no reverb and just sitting it back there somewhere works better than trying to put the wrong reverb on. So I think that when it starts to go wrong, it's when you're trying to put stuff with the wrong reverb in a space that already exists. And if you put one or two things in the space and it doesn't have any ambience on it, you can kind of get away with that rather than put the wrong thing on. So
okay, because
I'd go with match EQ, no reverb, and try and blend it in as best I can.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much, Gaz. I'm anticipating that you perhaps have something to say on the subject as well. So we'll come to you too, because your video seems to have reanimated.
Well, I think it's an interesting one as well. Is where is the line between doing what's necessary and vanity? Because I know that loads of these great 70s live albums were. If you excuse the language, touched up. I think, when does it become deceptive, or when does it become just doing the right thing to make what's there sound good? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's quite interesting from a sort of audience point of view, would you feel if this wonderful live album that you listen to, would you feel sort of slightly squizzed if you knew some of the parts weren't original?
As a layperson, I don't think I would actually, really. I mean, if it was all unoriginal, you know, maybe the bits, the whole vocal or something, you know, maybe. But I don't think I particularly would. I don't know what anybody else thinks about that.
You know, as I say, you know, maybe I'm a little old-fashioned, but I love to see a band who can really play really well. And you know, if I heard a live,
you can't ever record that, can you? I mean, if you're really honest, it doesn't matter how many microphones you put on a band that can really play, and it doesn't matter how good the sound engineer is, you just cannot record that vibe. You can't get it. Because you're talking about taking things that are 2 inches in diameter at best, placing them bang up close to instruments, and then trying to record. You lose all the time delays that you get from people being in the space and stuff, and it all just starts to condense into this weird little stereo field that we listen to music in. So I don't think it's very easy to capture.
I personally think the hardest thing would be is obviously if you're replacing something that was, if you're putting something in that wasn't there in the first place, that's something different to replacing something that was there, because the amount of spill that's going to be going down all the other mics, you know, the drum mics, the amp, whatever, that's an interesting thing to try and solve, you know, because
I think it's almost like a kind of, I'm being a bit airy-fairy now, but it's almost like is there a spiritual dimension of musicians playing together? And when you start to kind of pick at that and replace, are you tampering with something, you know?
Well, I don't know. The classic retouched album apparently. The classic retouched album is Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous, which I know Andy probably sings. He's got a Thin Lizzy icon on his Facebook personality. He might feel qualified to say something about. But before that, Rich, you were shaking your head vigorously about my point about the spill and what have you. That's not an issue then, presumably? You thinking you can process that stuff out anyway?
People will accept things as believable remarkably easily. And I don't mean that as any kind of a rap or bad or insult on people who
we want it to be true most of the time, don't you?
Substance of my life. I'm just saying, it's the audio sleight of hand is actually, I find, incredibly easy, and people will accept things far more hideous than I will provide.
Right.
But it all goes back into that idea that we're squashing everything down into this weird little stereo field to listen to it, doesn't it? Because, I mean, it's already an audio illusion that there's any sense of space there at all, really. So they're already convinced they're hearing something that sounds like a live band when they're listening to it on their iPod. So all you have to do is make it sound like a good stereo recording of a live band, right?
That's been the legacy of my last 25 years. I don't know about you.
Can I say something about Bernard's bass, actually?
Yeah.
Because Bernard's bass was underneath Warren Cucurulo's couch when I was working with Duran Duran for about maybe 5 years, I think. And Warren used to pull the bass out and play it. And they were all convinced that it had in some way, still had the spirit of Bernard with it. In some way, and Nick and Warren were absolutely, really adamant that nobody should ever change the strings. And I played it, and I have to say, it did sound really good. And then eventually JT came and got it back and sort of said, oh, that's mine, can I have it back, please? And he changed the strings, and it never sounded the same after that. It was almost as if something had been dismantled about its character. So I've no doubt Bernard probably made anything sound brilliant, but...
I just remembered you telling me this story 10 years ago.
Sorry?
I just remembered you telling me this story 10 years ago when John broke the bass out when we were working at Sphere.
Yeah.
But the thing about the strings in Bernard is he never changed the strings. And it was a joke about somebody came up to him and said, "Oh, Mr. Edwards, what kind of strings do you use?" And he said, "I don't know. What kind of strings come on a Music Man bass?" I've met a few guys.
We should have saved them, shouldn't we?
I met a few guys who don't. Rick Ocasek also doesn't change his strings. When I worked with him in 1990, he was using the same strings he had written those songs on in the mid-'70s. On that same SG. No, I'm serious.
Well, he's a lucky guy.
The Dazzle Band album has some of that vibe in it then, doesn't it? It's still in there. Midazoland, that bass was played a lot on Midazoland and also on the album after that. So,
but the other thing I know is I've picked up guitars owned by many very, very famous and highly respected guitarists, and I sound like none of them when I play it. But if they pick up my guitar, they sound exactly like them.
See, I'm not entirely sure. See, when I pick up other people's guitars, the frets and the way that the thing's being played does make a difference to the way that the instrument plays. So it does influence you.
Yeah, it will do, I suppose.
But I don't sound like them.
Well,
ever.
I've just realised that we have a sponsor, and I should probably do something about that and talk a little bit about that, and maybe we can come back to another topic shortly. So just 1 second, and I will press the button. And then maybe something will happen. Here we go. This is Yamaha World of Application. I want to say thank you very much to Yamaha for their sponsorship of the show. Really do appreciate it. They've got some great new stuff out, stuff even outside of the scope of this wonderful graphic that we're showing. If you're watching the video side of things, there's over 20 applications. I can think of at least 21 now with the visualizer. 20 applications in the music category alone. Yamaha are putting a lot of effort into making the iPad and the iOS a really kind of convincing workspace. So I've sort of got some audio dropouts there. Workspace for the musician. Got control of various Mox, Motif S-Series keyboards. In fact, you've got the S90X, S70XS, Motif XS, edit and control. With voice editor, performance edit allow you to get to the individual parts and the effect setting, XY pads, that side of things. There's also the set list organizer, which we showed in one of our early Sonic Touch episodes. This is great. Allows you to make notes around various different songs, send out program changes, put in images, and just fire things off. There's also record and share with the cloud audio recorder. So really, if you're serious about making music and you also have an iPad, do go out and check out the Yamaha World of Apps. Go onto iTunes, search out for the Yamaha apps, or go to uk.yamaha.com. And once again, we thank Yamaha for their continued sponsorship of the show. Right, next we'll have. I think we should do the Felix. I'm not sure how I pronounce this. Felix Baumgartner. I mean, let's not forget, a bloke jumped from 24 miles from outside from the Earth's surface and reached the speed of 834 miles per hour on Thursday of last week, 14th of October. An amazing achievement, and I can play probably a tiny weeny bit of video, perhaps without getting into trouble. This is the one that got me. It's this shot here where he just kind of... Hold on, where he just opens the door and is standing on the... That just blows my mind. Completely. I'm not going to play anymore because YouTube will probably sue my sorry person. But I was thinking, this is an amazing achievement. I mean, incredible thing. I don't know if anybody got the chance to watch it. Apparently 8 million people watched it. Yeah, it was weighed down by the size of his balls, says Rapscallion in the chat room, which I think is a nice little point there. I'm wondering if is there a musical equivalent of this? And I think that because the reason I'm asking this, and I'm looking at Andy really because he's on tour with The Darkness and Lady Gaga at the time, who are possibly the sort of... There's somebody amongst there who is the equivalent of Felix Baumgartner and his achievements. I know Lady Gaga has done some amazing things in terms of just her work rate alone. And I'm guessing that the guys in The Darkness, I mean, watching the stuff that I saw from the live shows, just researching on YouTube, I've got a pretty astonishing work rate. I mean, what sort of superhuman feats can you attest to in this in the musical world, perhaps? Or is that a far...
No, the couple of things that came to mind when looking at that question this morning, again, when Dave sent us stuff through via email, musical equivalent of somebody taking such a risky dive in front of the world.
Yes.
The first thing that came to mind, honestly, and it's really more of a Bill Bailey joke, is perhaps U2 trying to do a song without a delay pedal. would be would be a similar kind of naked explosion, whether or not they would in fact fly or not.
That's an interesting point. I don't know if you've ever seen what's it? Some Like It Loud, Make It Loud. The kind of
I watched a bit. We were watching a bit of that the other day, actually.
And it's amazing. You've got these guitarists who come on and they just have this amazing tone, and then Edge wheels this giant kind of rack of stuff. And you can tell he feels a bit sheepish about the fact that his sound, and there's no reason he should, because it's an amazing, groundbreaking sound, but it sort of feels like artifice, in the face of a bloke winding a piece of wire around a nail and a pickup and making a wonderful sound. But yeah, I take your point.
Compounded by the fact that he then takes it down the beach to play it. He has it all wheeled down the beach, doesn't he, with a battery power pack, and he stands and looks out at the sea and plays, which is great. I mean, it's not. I'm not decrying it, but it's not really it's not really a natural environment for the instrument, is it? In terms of physical feats, there's a period that Justin went through that we managed to stop him, where he did a thing called the leap of faith, which is your physical equivalent, where he climbed on balconies and crucifixed himself down into the audience. We had to stop him doing that because of the possibility of suing, of course.
Oh gosh, yeah.
He also does a headstand in the middle of Get Your Hands Off, where he encourages the crowd to clap by using his feet in a star shape whilst doing a headstand.
Wow. So that's quite. I'm surprised at the level of physical. I mean, he's obviously kind of must be. How long do they play on a support night? Is what 40?
On the Gaga shows they play for 45 minutes.
Right. So I suppose he can cram a hell of a lot of stuff in there, whereas a 2-hour show might be a little more draining. You can get it all in one bit, I suppose. It must be very intense.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's quite an intense show. Yeah. He's a very physically fit man now, though. So, I think he relishes the hour and a half rather than... I think he's just getting warmed up after 45 minutes.
Oh, God. So, I mean, comes off stage after 45 minutes and then it's like a ball of energy and sort of needs... It's like a toddler after a sugar rush, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yes, I won't go into any questions about how one winds down or anything like that. I'll leave that
these days... No, but that's fine these days because I can answer those. Because these days it's going to the gym or... going to a restaurant, so yeah, there's nothing untoward going on anymore.
Ah, well, I'm glad to hear that clean life prevails.
Yes.
Actually, Dave, while I've got you there, because I forgot to, I keep forgetting to come to you because I keep asking Andy, which is probably very rude of me.
It's considered I'm in his house.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's my guest. No, I've seen fair few people's careers flop like this guy fell out the sky. I once jumped off a diving board once. That was quite cool. And I have nothing else to add other than I didn't want to listen to that music when I watched that video. I wanted to hear that Boards of Canada, Dave and Cowboy. You remember that video where it was very similar. And I was just like, and I've actually rerun it a few times.
Oh, what, with the alternative music track?
Kind of, pompous American rock music. Something a little bit cooler. But yeah, there you go.
Emotive, X-Factor, emotional, uplifting kind of music bed. I'm just getting a bit sick of those, really.
Stuff kind of, it does make me feel a little bit ill.
Yeah, well, I wonder how much that whole thing must have cost Red Bull. I mean, that is, and I was also looking at, I was thinking, I wonder how, that there was all that talk about the idea that the Apollo moon landings could have been faked and it was done in the desert somewhere or in a sort of French warehouse. And I was thinking, actually, because there's this little tiny blurry sort of white thing that's dropping through I'm sure it wasn't the case, but I was just in case, for instance, if he said, I'm not doing it when he got up there.
From my perspective, the really weird thing is, of course, the advertising slogan over here is Red Bull gives you wings.
Well, that's cheating, like.
It kind of didn't, did it?
No, makes you fall like a stone. Red Bull makes you drop at the speed of sound. Yeah. I don't know. Mark, I'm guessing there might be something you could add to this topic?
I've been thinking about this quite a lot, actually, since this topic began. And I think that the musical equivalent of this jump to Earth from space is one of Gav's long S-curve fades. And you're going to think, why is he saying that?
Ah, okay.
Because when he jumped out, when he left the capsule, right, the speed of sound where he left the capsule is 690 miles an hour. When he landed on the ground, the speed of sound when he landed on the ground is 761 miles an hour. So there's a kind of a curve happening where the speed of sound speeds up as he gets closer to the Earth. And he reached 831 mile an hour, and they're claiming that he made Mach 1.24. But how long did it take him to accelerate? So this is my rant about it, actually. I'll try not to make it a rant about it, but I want to see the data. How did they work out that 831 mile an hour was Mach 1.24? Because they must know at what point he reached 831 mile an hour. So where was the speed of sound in relation to that? Oh. Because it looks like they've just gone 1.24 from 690 from when he jumped out. So I don't think he did 0 to 831 mile an hour in a split second. So I think it's like one of Gav's beautiful S-curves.
That's a very interesting point. I'm probably going to make my head explode there. Rich, what do you have to contribute?
Not a damn thing. My life has never been put in danger by anything I've ever done in a recording studio that I can recall.
Well, let's
put it this way: anything that I didn't do willingly.
I wasn't sort of necessarily thinking about it's a musical risk, I suppose. You know, I'm going to try that F sharp here. How's that? It's like, no, you can't do that. The book says no.
I think hitting the solo button at the live show is a pretty close call.
Good point.
I watched Pro Tools crash during a rehearsal this summer and decided not to run it on stage the following night because I was afraid it would do it again. I mean, it didn't crash. It just went through a buffer error and stopped playing. And I said, no, we can't have that tomorrow.
No, well, that's a...
And other people said that too.
But then what does that mean for the next show? What do you have to do to kind of not run it? That's quite a lot of work, presumably, to kind of cover it.
No, I bounced some shit down and played it in iTunes. It was great.
I like it. Bounce some shit down and play it in iTunes. That sounds like a show title there, if ever I heard one.
If it rocks your world, go for it.
Gaz.
Is this, I mean, from a personal point of view, something that my band done, I don't know if I've ever mentioned about this before, but when we signed a record deal in the year 2000 and we were talking about our first single, at the time MP3s were just about to become a household, well, they were just becoming a household name back then, sort of MP3s. It was just coming of age. And we realized that you could fit 12 hours of music on a regular CD of, you know, as data, stored as data.
Gotcha.
So Frank from the band Rocket Goldstar that I'm still playing in, thought it would be fun if we made a 12-hour long single. And so that was our... So we recorded it as a live performance, and it started at midday. And it went through to midnight. It was actually had quite a lot of press at the time. There was a guy. It was covered in the NME. There was an NME journalist there did a write-up on it and stuff. And we had lots of guests coming in at various points. But man, I tell you what, it's hard work playing 12 hours long. It's really hard. And the idea of this kind of stemmed from this thing that we were finding it very difficult to record cool jams. Every time we'd have a cool jam and we checked the recording, and for some reason it eluded us, and it just seemed like pure improvised music is always better when it's not captured and
it's totally ignored.
Yeah, was best left alone. Yes.
So we thought if we played for 12 hours, then at some point in that 12 hours we'll capture a couple of minutes of it, you know.
That'd be a good bit, yeah.
It's like a
Does
jam
anyone
with
listen
Eno.
back to it?
Yeah, well,
how the hell, I mean, what I want to know is, you record for 12 hours. How the hell did somebody then go through it? You listen to it. You can only really listen to that once and make some decisions. You couldn't go, no, I'm going to listen to that again. I mean, that would just be...
we had a competition. We embedded a competition into it. Sort of. Unfortunately, the competition never actually got completed. But the competition was there was like a painting by numbers picture, and you got the colours. Every so often, I would sing at a random point. I would say, "Number 3 is purple," and so you could only colour in the picture correctly if you listen to the whole thing.
Really? Nobody bothered to do that? You do surprise me.
Oh man,
I think it's brilliant.
It's a great. I think it's a fantastic. The only thing that I think you might have found out subsequently, or after you'd gone down the planning route, was a single has to be under a certain length of time.
Yes.
To be considered to be a single.
Yes.
Yeah.
And therefore to enter the charts in any way or have any record of his existence.
Yes, that's why there's no record of its existence now.
That's was that the one that got you? Was it?
I got a friend who did completely the opposite. He tried to fit 7 singles on a single, so every one had to be a minute long. That was it.
Oh, brilliant!
And I've still got loads of them, and they're absolutely brilliant.
Wow.
Now that would have been a challenge. 12 hours worth of minute-long songs.
Oh,
Christ! Imagine what your brain would be like after. Yeah, Rich is putting the proverbial gun to the head there in a sort of just in a kind of yeah. That would be tough.
The funny thing with the 12-hour single though is we had a verse and a chorus that was pre-written by Sean, the drummer, and we thought, oh man, this verse chorus by, sort of, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours in is just going to be really, really cool. And that just got worse and worse and worse as we went on. And like, I tell you, it's because we're trying to constantly create and change and do all this stuff. Your brain at some point, I think probably about the 9-hour mark, starts to kind of get really glutinous and... and the most strangest stuff starts coming out as well from your type,
Oh man, that sounds brilliant. That sounds like. Was there an audience the entire time?
Yeah. Well, also we had there was quite a lot of people hanging around in it was in a studio. It was quite a big studio, and it was like a live room and a control room, and what was quite fun was we had a little thing called Rocket Guest Star, and every so often they would hold up a sign in a window that said Rocket Guest Star, and then the door would open and in would come someone. They may be a friend of ours or a musician who we liked, who we'd invited. We had 64 guests over the 12-hour period, but we didn't know who was coming next. So we would have the sign in the window. So so the three of us, 3-piece band, the three of us would be playing, and then someone new would come in, and they would come in for a stint of no longer than I think it was 20 minutes was the kind of cut off for any guest. And I'd got in touch with a group of experimental musicians who I didn't know, but someone had said, "Oh, you should contact these people who build their own instruments and they get together and blah blah blah." And so we had a whole bunch of people who. He would go Rocket Guest Star, the door would come in would walk a complete stranger with the strangest contraption that they pack up and go. And I've never seen him again since,
Oh, that just sounds like such a fun event. I can imagine you were all exhausted after that. And it's a shame. I think there's a great idea in there as well. That could be repeated. Maybe not 12 hours because you've done it and know what it feels like. But yeah. That is like free falling for 12 hours essentially, isn't it? But it must have honed your kind of improvisational and kind of musical chops after that. I bet you felt you could tackle anything, right?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, ASIO Head's asking if the recording still exists. It does still exist. So if anyone wants a copy of it, email me, gazgoldstar@hotmail.com maybe. And then I'll do a big I'll transfer it and send it to it.
Yeah.
Put a link in your Twitter feed. If they follow you on Twitter, then you can put a link to it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's
I'd like to have been a guest to have been the next door neighbour who'd have just walked in and pulled the fuse out of the board 3 hours in.
But it was technically, I mean, this was in the year 2000, and actually to stitch it together, there was like 4 DAT players running, 3 DAT players, and like there was somebody who was just doing that all day, and there was like basically the whole thing was a stereo mix down onto DAT. And
and also, I mean, just be able to deal with that much data at that time would have been pretty difficult, right?
Yeah, 2000, yeah, and we had to. It took us a couple of days to stitch together all the parts and get all the kind of each DAT correctly sort of overlaid. We'd wait until I think it was about 5 minutes before the end of the DAT, then the other DAT would start. So it was all quite crude, but it all is stitched together pretty seamlessly though. So it was an achievement of a sort.
Yeah, no, definitely. That sounds like great fun. Great fun. I don't know how I can follow that. That just sounds like it might be. Let's see what else we've got. Is there something? Is there any topics here that that people are very particularly keen to cover? We could probably squeeze one more in.
I like that synth.
Which one? The
look at that Boomstar.
The Boomstar. Okay, all right. Well, I will. As soon as you brought an extra guest, you get to to make first dibs. Right. Let me press. I think I've got a button for that. The static image, of course. This is the Studio Electronics Boomstar, which is, as far as I can tell, a sort of fairly standard. I'm just trying to load out now. A couple of oscillators, is that right? With different filter types. You can buy this in different filter types, and if I go to Boomstar page here, there's a bigger image of it here actually. Which is this is the Boomstar 4075. We were listening to the 4075 there. The 4075 is the one that has the ARP filter type, but you can get it with the 4075 Classic ARP 2600 filter type, 5089 Classic Move 24 dB ladder, SEM Classic Oberheim 12 dB, and the 303 Classic Roland TB. 799. Not actually available as yet, as far as I can tell. But Dave, you were keen on this. Do tell. What was it that kind of thrilled you about that? I mean, it seemed to me that they perhaps should have made one with interchangeable filters.
Yeah, they've done that before, though, haven't they? They did the thing with the little packs you put in. I can't remember what that was called now. That was, but I like Studio Electronics stuff, and this kind of struck me as very interesting. Great price for what it is, and it kind of sparked off a debate here, because obviously there's a fair few people putting different filter modes in, and one of the things that I was saying to Chris earlier is that I love that idea, but for me it's the way each of the components within a particular synth interacts with each other that makes that synth have a load of character or not a lot of character, or makes it quirky, and I like that, you know, the Prophet and the Polymod stuff, the OBX and the Crossmod stuff, the 8-voice, and it's the way these modules interact. So whether you can take a filter module on its own and go, we're just putting it with this oscillator or whatnot, and whether you get that same kind of joy. But I tell you, at $799, I will try.
It's nice to see, and there's also some sort of modular type action going on. You've got VCO mod, VCF mod, gate in, external in, envelope output. Let's see what else we've got there. Sub oscillator looks like. A VC, yeah. There's also a single LFO, is there? 2 targets, which is kind of interesting for the single VCO. So, and an overdrive circuit. It looks kind of cool. I mean, Rich, have you ever had any Studio Electronics stuff? They're a US manufacturer. I'm guessing somebody might have tried to peddle one to you at some point.
Yes. I've used their products, and they rack mounted our vintage Mini Moog, actually.
Oh, that's right, because they that's where they kind of came from, wasn't it? Was modifying. Yeah. Yeah.
Before they started releasing their own products, they were known as the people who would take your Mini Moog and put it in a rack with MIDI and add a few new features like multiple triggering and things like that. I thought this was a very, very interesting product, and I couldn't hear it until just now when you played the demo, and I think it's probably going to sound great, but I think they have a real marketing problem with this thing, because when you release 4 versions of the same thing, nobody knows what to buy. And as much as I agree with every single thing Dave said, when he said, I'd like to have one of these, I say to you, which one?
Yeah, no.
And what I think they should have done was pick one. I don't care. Probably not the 303 first. So you release either the Moog filter or the Oberheim filter first, say. And you let that fester in the marketplace and everybody love it and let it gain all this notoriety as a product, and people will start screaming, well, why don't you do one with a Moog filter? Yeah. Well, funny you should mention it. Or an ARP 2600 filter. But to release 4 of these at the same time, I think leaves your customers going, I don't know what to do. What else we got here? You know, like, and they move on. You know, I think it's a confusing marketing concept. I think it's a great idea and a wonderful thing to do it. And I agree with Dave about when you're not mixing together voices through the filter, through a single one of these filters, you're using it differently, and you can't expect the same result. But it'll still sound great, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good point. I know, Mark Tinley, have you used any Studio Electronics stuff?
Yes, I have, and I do remember when they used to rack mount Moogs or Moogs. Is that right? Moogs.
Moog, apparently.
And they were pretty phenomenal beasts, and I was very impressed. And then after that, they brought out this other thing with coloured buttons all over.
ATC one, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what they did with that is they had a little cartridge thing that you could punch in the back of it, and it would turn it into all of the, well, probably not dissimilar things. I think it had an Oberheimer 303, a Moog, and maybe another one. I don't know if there was another one. We had a couple of those modules, and that sounded brilliant as well. So why didn't they do that? Maybe they could have done that. A little,
Yeah, well, maybe so. Maybe they felt that it was it had been done and it wouldn't get any press. I don't know. I mean, we're talking about it, I suppose.
Though, doesn't it?
It does. It reminds me a little bit of the kind of Macbeth Micromac kind of vibe. It's that sort of desktopy, Euro-racky kind of.
It's also got that kind of classic modular kind of look to it as well, in a way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Knobs in rows and stuff.
Actually, they look like Philips Philaccordia knobs.
Oh, I've just got one of those in here.
Have you?
Literally, we just got one from Kasabian, and
I saw one of those.
It's on the floor. Do you want to see it?
Oh yeah, no, I saw one of those at a car boot sale once. Yeah, they are beautiful. Will Gregory's got one.
Wow.
They are nice, actually.
There you go.
I saw one at a car boot sale and I didn't buy it, and I really kicked myself for it. It was only 30 quid.
Ooh.
I mean, that was a number of years ago, mind, but I don't know. Gaz, are you interested in this, or I don't know.
I used to have a Studio Electronics SE1.
Oh, okay.
I had that for a number of years, but I hated it. I loved the sound of it. I just hated the operating system. It was one of those things where it was virtually everything was on the front panel except a few really crucial bits
that you needed the most.
Yeah, I used to find it really irritating. I'd borrowed a mini Moog. I say unashamedly, Model D for a while. I got that one thinking that it was going to give me a similar experience, and I really didn't like it. This sounded great, but it just goes to show, I think, that if you don't get the playability, you don't get all the instant access things right. I don't know. It could be such a turn-off. I mean, this, however, looks pretty cool in that it's pretty fully featured, isn't it? The clock controls. They've got those little mini controls at the bottom, haven't they, as well? Which
there's feedback listening. I guess that's the sort of returning signal back into itself to get that kind of drive. That's down there.
Getting quite popular now, isn't it? To have
wiggling my mouse around it now, it's going to look very tiny by the time it gets to whatever you're watching. But it does look pretty cool. But $799 seems quite reasonable. Dollars actually does seem quite reasonable for something that's so niche. So yeah, I agree with you, Dave. There.
Yeah, interesting. Would have been nice, like you say, if you could switch through the filter section. But like I keep saying, it's the way all these things interact. The voodoo inside the instrument.
The voodoo that you do. Andy, are you a synthesizer guy? Or are you a bass player? I'm trying to remember.
No, I'm not a synthesizer guy. No, I did used to play bass and started to buy odd things now. I just bought a Steinberger, a Hohner Steinberger.
Oh, I remember those. Is that a carbon body?
It was, but the Hohner one's made of wood.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, obviously, it was ridiculed on the Darkness bus, which is the main reason I was made to buy it. So that I could be ridiculed for being.
Wasn't the Steinberger bass the one that it was the original kind of one of the slap bass sounds from the Akai one or the Fairlight one? It was the Steinberger bass that had the I can't remember who used one, but it was a very 80s moment.
It is very it's and you pick one up now and it is still a very 80s moment. Interestingly enough, when say, oh, that's great. Has it got that little thing, that little flap so you can rest it on your leg? And I go, yeah, and they go, that's my favourite bit about that bass.
Oh yeah,
everybody's favourite bit is this little flap thing that comes out so you can rest it on your leg.
Because it's such a stupid shape, otherwise, I think for a guitar.
Says a lot.
Yeah, this sort of shoehorn thing.
Puts it on his motorbike because it's small, and he can go and play gigs.
My first band, me and the guitarist both had black Hohner.
Oh dear.
He had the guitar one, and I had a 5-string one.
Wow! Did you wear matching ties?
When we were 16, and we thought we were so cool. I mean, this was about 1988, so it was.
Yeah, you were so wrong. You didn't by any chance, but it would have been I'm hoping one of you is left-handed and one was right-handed. So when you looked at the stage, they actually went out in opposite directions.
No, sadly not. But we were working on a system where we could make them spin like ZZ Top style. So
one of the more useful things you can do with a Steinberg instrument.
I imagine it'd be quite easy to spin.
Mind you, I played a 1982 Steinberger, Steinberg. No, Steinberger. I always get Steinberg. The graphite one, and it sounded amazing. I really thought, ooh, I'd catch.
They do sound great. I mean, this one sounds great, and it's very easy to play. It's just very difficult to play it without somebody laughing at you.
As indeed we're all proving now, even at the thought of it.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know.
Wow, that's a great. What a great way to end the show. Has anyone got anything else to add before I do the wrap up? Because that's it's a fabulous tale. Nope. Okay then. Well, thank you everybody. That was a great fun show. I'm sorry about the audio dropouts. We did decide for some bizarre reason to kind of tidy up the cabling in the studio just before I started the show, and I'm guessing that maybe one of the digital lines has got a little kink in it or something, which is why the clock was dropping somewhere along the line. So sorry about that, but I've tried to pause and ask people to carry on afterwards. Anyway, I'm now actually undoing any good work I might have done. I should have just not brought attention to it, didn't I? I've completely blown. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to say, first of all, we'll go to Dave Spears and Andy Shillito there. Dave Spears, of course, there in the ever-decreasing room that he's removing all of his stuff from, going somewhere else. GeForce Software, makers of fine musical instruments. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thank you. We took the M4 out today, and guess what? It was amazing. So we got the M4 out.
That's the Octagon, right?
The Chamberlain.
Chamberlain, sorry, yes.
Massive. Yeah, that's 300 kilos, and we were just kind of going, oh, God, it's so heavy for us old people. And we'd find a young person so we can break his back. And about 10 minutes later, some more stuff turned up from Japan. So we were like, right, now what am I going to do with this? Oh, and the Phil Cordier as well. But yeah. So
you're getting there. So, Andy Shillito, is that the reason you're actually there? You were just hired muscle?
No. I was just passing and needed a cup of tea.
Andy Shillito, thank you very much for joining us and sharing some of your stories from what is it? Probably, are you going back out on the road again with Darkness, or is that the end of it now?
No, we're going back out for another 2 months with Gaga doing the South America, South Africa. We'll finish on December the 12th, and I actually leave tomorrow.
Oh, well, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate that. I imagine on a tour such as that, you must get all sorts of celebs showing up who want to have a chat with Gaga. Do you find there's sort of some very unusual characters wandering about backstage looking for the green room?
Yes, but security is very tight. I think there's always unusual characters at any backstage looking for the elusive green room and the after show.
Yeah, where's the after show, man?
Thinking for some reason you'll tell them what hotel and what room number the band are staying in if they ask you nicely.
Yeah, that's unlikely. It just shows the sign of a true professional. Andy Shillito, thank you very much for joining us as well. Thank you.
He's always doing it.
And also,
thank you.
No, thank you. And Rich Hilton there in Connecticut, in your recuperative room there. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm glad to see you in such robust health.
Thank you. Had fun. It was great to see you guys.
And
really, stay healthy, Andy.
I'll try.
I'm sure everybody will echo that sentiment. Anyway, Rich, thank you very much. Hiltonius.com for all your Rich Hilton needs. Although I can't vouch for how up to date your website is. I'm sure it's all this recuperative time. There's no excuse not to have your website up to date. Surely.
Okay. I'll run with that as a concept.
Yeah.
Here forward.
Anyway, thank you very much, Rich. And we'll also say thank you to Mark Tinley over there. Mark will have to speak to gain entrance to the large window. There's Mark in the square window. Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for joining us too, Mark, and for being so on time. I'm much appreciated. I'm sure you've...
You're very welcome. I don't know how that happened. It was a bit of a miracle, really. You know, one of those events. Unprecedented world event, me arriving back here before 4 o'clock. So.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anyway, likebeing.com for all of Mark's stuff, and we'll hopefully speak to you again very, very soon. So thank you. And finally, we'll say goodbye to Gaz Williams, who's over there in Bristol in his Gaz's garret. He'll have to speak.
Well, I thought I would end in a slightly camp kind of way.
You end on a camp way. Okay, let's hear it.
Well, I just thought I'd talk to you like this.
Courtesy of The Voice Live.
Oh, endless fun.
Brilliant, Gaz. Gaz Goldstar at Gaz Goldstar. Follow Gaz and see. And maybe you'll get to hear that 12-hour single if you've got half a day spare.
Is there? How can you do it on SoundCloud now? They used to restrict it by hours, but is it maybe data amount now? Maybe I can just check.
No, it's time. It's a blood. Don't get me started. You could all. I know you couldn't upload it to YouTube because that'd be too long as well, unless your channel is. Yeah, that's very tricky.
Yeah, we used to have it up on our website, our old website, but that's long gone. So yeah, I'll try and figure something out. But
I'm just trying to think what would be the size of a 12-hour MP3 at 192 kbps.
Yeah, I think so. Sort of a WeTransfer or something, and just put it to the emails people, I guess. But yeah, I mean, be aware there is some extremely tedious moments on it.
Tell me how big it is, and if it's big, if it's manageable, I can stick it on one of our servers, and you can give you a link.
Oh, cool! It's about 700 meg, I think, because that was the thing.
Jesus, it would be about 700 meg.
Good shout there, Mark. Well spotted. Anyway, Gaz, thank you very much for joining us. We very much appreciate it, and we can all have a group wave. Couldn't we? We can all have a group because we've got a full shot there. So thanks ever so much for everybody joining us. I thought I had something to play us out with. Oh yes, I did. I had a bit of Darkness from the Isle of Wight, but I pretty much think if I do that, I'm bound to get nobbled on YouTube. So I'm not going to play it. I'll give you one brief. Hold on, that's not it. Is it that one? I'm pretty sure I did have some footage. I just don't know where it is now.
That was brilliant.
That's not it. That's not it either. It's in this one, which I haven't actually...
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, never mind. Obviously, I forgot to save it, knowing that if I didn't actually play it back, it would be probably for the best, because I don't want to get busted for copyright infringements. I've already had a warning on YouTube, and it's just not worth it. Anyway, Sonic Talk number 287. My God, we're heading towards the magical 300. Yeah. Thanks very much. That's it. It's a wrap. Cheers.
I am amazed you can have a warning on YouTube, because I've tried to